So here's what I'm going to be thinking about for the rest of today. My thoughts go to Somalia this morning, where I was sent nearly 20 years ago to cover the horrible famine back in 1992 that became, you'll recall, the motivation for George H.W. Bush to send U.S. troops into Somalia, a decision that eventually became a fiasco for President Clinton some months later. But Somalia wasn't a place I knew much about back then, and we airlifted in with care to a little town called Baidoa. It was like going to the moon. Not because the people were alien in some way, no, because the predicament of Somalia was so horrifying to see. Famine was just a small piece of the disaster there. The nation, I discovered, had been eviscerated by the Cold War. It had been traded as a client state between Washington and Moscow, Somalia along with Ethiopia. They both had that experience during the Cold War. Somalia's Ziad Barre and Ethiopia's Mengistu played the superpowers for the best deals on arms and aid and weapons. And weapons flowed into both countries. But in Somalia, it fueled a civil war in which militia groups armed to the teeth just obliterated the fragile network of tribal village infrastructure, completely destroyed it. It was primitive, but it was still a functioning system to preserve and protect people. The Somalia I found was run by these impromptu militias, boys high on local drugs with AK-47s and 50 caliber machine guns mounted on pickup trucks, stealing and obstructing the delivery of aid. In town after town, I can still see the thin bodies piled high in those morgues. Feeding centers filled with desperate children reaching for crackers and milk, skeletons along the roadside, and then inexplicably, a village of well-fed and typically well-armed people would just appear out of nowhere. The saddest image in Somalia for me was this, a giant airstrip in the city of Berbera in the north. It was built by the United States as a possible emergency landing site for the space shuttle. Never saw a shuttle, though. Now it never will. It was a giant promise of something from America, a windswept, abandoned piece of tarmac with a trailer, millions of dollars in aid, so little positive impact. Saw a lot of evidence of landmines, though, amputated limbs and dead livestock. I left Somalia in 1992 thinking how the destruction of those village networks was a mortal wound to the country. The young kids with their drugs and guns were not going to just decide one day to revert back to their elders. There were no elders, and no memory of what they knew, and no interest in them. Nothing. Just guns and drugs and this Wild West. I thought rain and food might end the famine in Somalia, but it wasn't going to bring back a real nation in that country. No. And I was right. I wonder if some of those kids in 1992 grew up and became members of Al-Shabaab, stealing and obstructing aid delivery today on their pickup trucks with 50 caliber machine guns. You can see the pictures. It's as though nothing has changed. Brandishing their guns, famine is back. But Somalia, as a real nation, still as lost as it was back in 1992. That's what I'm going to be thinking about for the rest of today. Have a nice day. See you tomorrow.